not solve today's global problems without contributions from all of society.
Speaking to the youth is like speaking to the future. You are the torchbearers.
The Summit of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape multilateral system and to put young people at the center.
Give them the space and the freedom to participate meaningfully in finding the solutions.
We need to decentralize and localize financing so that communities can step up and take action for themselves.
If you are not including persons with disabilities, you are missing 1.3 billion people around the world.
It's going to take transformative change, systemic change, underpinned by feminist principles to make sure that young people, especially young women and girls, are at the center of multilateralism.
Las mujeres con discapacidad seamos vistas.
The smart bet is always on the youth.
Not just youth consultations or youth-informed decisions, but young people at the table.
An agreement is nothing before action.
To recommit to multilateralism through the United Nations to resolve disputes peacefully.
Action must be taken now to safeguard the SDGs and sustainable futures for all.
None of this is possible without innovative, inclusive, and multi-stakeholder partnerships.
I believe that it is possible for us to have a win-win.
What I can promise you is that we will carry your insights and ideas forward into the Summit of the Future.
Friends, this is what effective, inclusive, networked multilateralism must look like.
Let's shape our future together.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, take your seats, please. It is time to start. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, let us start now. The third plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. I declare open the Summit of the Future. This summit is held in accordance with Resolution 76/307 of 8 September 2022 and Decisions 78/555 of 10th July 2024 and 78/564B of 6 September 2024 and takes place under Agenda Item 123 entitled Strengthening of the United Nations System. In connection with this item, the Assembly has before it a draft resolution issued as document A/79/L2 and a draft amendment issued as document A/79/L3. The draft resolution before the Assembly contains the Pact of the Future and its annexes, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. They represent the combination of many months of negotiations and embody compromise from all sides. No internationally agreed document is perfect. However, I strongly believe that the Pact, Compact, and Declaration represent the broadest support of member states. I urge all states to support the adoption of the Pact of the Future and its annexes. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation to introduce draft amendment A/79/L3.
Господин председатель.
Mr. President, almost 2 years ago, the GA resolution, A-Res 76/307, at that time, we wouldn't guess that the outcome document of our summit, the Pact for the Future, we'd agreed would be agreed upon ahead of time in accordance with consensus through intergovernmental negotiation. Unfortunately, this task was not fulfilled. Today, in violations of procedure for the adoption of the text, a number of delegations did not support this text. To speak strictly, we don't have anything to adopt today, and that is not the fault of the current president of the GA and his predecessor. They inherited this problem from predecessors and did all they could, but didn't have enough time. Today, will probably hear a great deal of praise for the pact and for those who took part in the negotiations. Colleagues, you must understand that all of this is hypocritical. In fact, the intergovernmental negotiations on the pact did not really take place. There was no meeting where delegations met, sat down at the same table, and held real negotiations on the draft broken down by paragraph. From the very beginning, the writers included in the text that was suitable to Western countries. And these questions were not resolved from the beginning to the very end. We requested sitting down and discussing these problems at the same table. But this cannot be called multilateralism. What happened is a major defeat for the UN because the principle of the sovereign equality of states enshrined in the Charter was sacrificed to the interests of a certain group of countries, and their interests were clearly laid out over the past months. Through these negotiations, it was decided by this group of countries what the document should look like and what should not be included in it. These are abuses that we have seen in the UN. There are a number of delegations that not only remained silent but supported this draft pact. And a great deal of this did not suit those delegations. What about the principle of leaving no one behind, which the SG likes to extol? Essentially, no one is happy with this text. Can we build the future on such a foundation? Is this what we are going to show to future generations? Mr. President, it would have been optimal not to put forward this non-consensus-based test, but to continue negotiations until this document finally is acceptable to all without exception. The direct negotiations with delegations and not maneuvers through coordinators. This summit would be our then common future, the victory of multilateralism in the UN Charter. I hope that you, Mr. President, will have the courage to propose this kind of procedural solution, and its details can be worked out in parallel with our summit. If you decide to do so, to move further and to push through a non-consensus text, then on the behalf of a number of countries, Belarus, Nicaragua, and the Russian Federation, we would like to propose an amendment to the draft text of this Pact for the Future and its annexes. Based on our amendment, the principle of non-interference in internal affairs of states, in accordance with the UN Charter, is something that must be followed by the UN. This is one of the fundamental principles of international law, which has not been reflected in the Pact. The amendment emphasizes the key role of the intergovernmental nature of UN decisions. The amendment emphasizes the need to prevent duplication of efforts and to maximize the effectiveness of the use of UN resources. All this is especially relevant given the current budget crisis in the organization. This amendment is not ignoring the needs of the global South, but on the contrary, is trying to protect them from further pressure from the collective West, which has not honored its previous obligations, for example, with the SDGs. And now they're trying to create new obligations, and now they are hiding behind the backs of the global South. Given the proposal of our amendment, we are hoping for the support of all delegations. And so our amendment being put to a vote was trying to uphold the intergovernmental nature of the UN and its charter. If our amendment is not included into the text of the pact, then we distance ourselves from the consensus on this document, on the Global Digital Pact as well. With regard to the provisions on disarmament, participation of NGOs in the work of the UN and the OHCHR. In any case, we believe it's crucial to emphasize that the pact is not a document that automatically creates new mandates and obligations for member states. It is simply a declaration, and quite a vague one. New mandates and obligations can only appear through an intergovernmental process that would take place through essentially a different process than how the work on the pact and its provisions were organized. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Congo on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to take the floor on behalf of the African Group, which my country is chairing for the month of September. President, the African Group would like to warmly congratulate the President of the General Assembly for co-facilitating this event, and also the Secretary General of the United Nations. We thank you for your tireless efforts, which together we have conducted during the negotiations that were so difficult and laborious. The African Union believes that it's our collective responsibility to ensure and guarantee a better future for current and future generations. We are now at a crossroads. Given what is at stake currently, what will define our common future, the African Group feels that we need to show unity and our capacity to find common answers to the multiple complex challenges that we are facing today. The African Group firmly believes that the adoption of this kind of amendment is not going to help us meet our expectations and legitimate aspirations. The African
Le leadership du président de l'Assemblée générale et l'appui dans tous ses efforts pour l'adoption du pacte pour l'avenir. Enfin, le groupe africain propose qu'aucune décision ne soit prise concernant le projet d'amendement A79L3. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Please stop it. Interpretation is not going. Please, Congo, can you start now? I'm sorry about that. Please, Congo, start now so that we can have the interpretation.
I thank you, Mr. President. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, I have the honor to take the floor on behalf of the African Group, of which we have the presidency. Mr. President, the African Group would like to address our warm congratulations to the President of the General Assembly, to the co-facilitators, as well as to the Secretary General of the United Nations for all of the efforts that we have undertaken together to ensure that we have gotten through these very complex, difficult negotiations. The African Group believes it's our collective responsibility to ensure and guarantee a better future for current and future generations at a time when we find ourselves at a crossroads. Given what is currently at stake, things that will define our common future, the African Group believes that we need to show our unity and our ability to provide common concerted answers to the multiple and complex challenges that we are facing today. The African Group firmly believes that the adoption of such an amendment is not going to help us meet our legitimate hopes and aspirations. The African Group firmly supports the leadership of the President of the General Assembly, and we support you in all of your efforts for the adoption of the Pact for the Future. And finally, the African Group would propose that no decision be taken with regard to the draft amendment A79L3. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Congo. The representative of the Congo has moved within the terms of Rule 74 of the Rules of Procedure, that no action be taken on draft amendment A/79/L3. Rule 74 reads as follows. During the discussion of any matter, a representative may move the adjournment of the debate on the item under discussion. In addition to the proposer of the motion, two representatives may speak in favor of and two against the motion, after which the motion shall be immediately put to the vote. Does any member wish to speak? I call on the representative of Mexico to take the floor.
Gracias, señor Presidente.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mexico would like to second the motion for no action, and we invite all members to vote yes in favor of the motion. The text of the amendment presented was never raised during negotiations, which prevented due consideration being given to it by delegations and by facilitators. Delegations have undertaken very many rounds of negotiations, and they have shown willingness to achieve consensus. We'd like to congratulate you and the co-facilitators for the work that you have done. Mexico also would have liked to put forward amendments on matters that are close to our hearts and a priority for our foreign policy, but we believe that the text that we have before us now is the best result possible, and it lays the foundation for the future work of this organization. We reiterate our willingness to continue to participate in constructive, transparent, and good faith negotiations. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Mexico. I call on the representative of Cameroon to take the floor.
Mr. President, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor. Mr. President, the delegation of Cameroon supports the motion introduced by Congo on behalf of the African Group. Cameroon firmly supports this document. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Cameroon. I call on the representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to take the floor.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has the honor to take the floor on behalf of delegations of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Syrian Arab Republic, and my own country with regard to the motion for no action that was introduced by Congo. This procedural maneuver that we are witnessing is a further demonstration of the arrogant view of certain Western states that we have had to, unfortunately, put up with during a very long and complex process of negotiations. It's also a maneuver which demonstrates, amongst other things, the fact that the provisions of Resolution 76/307 of the General Assembly have not been complied with. The text in A78L2, however, was not approved previously and was not certainly approved by consensus. If we have a different interpretation of what previously agreed, and I quote, and end the quote, means, and as defined in operative paragraph 4 of the modalities resolution, it might be a good idea for the Office of Legal Affairs to provide us with immediate guidance, Mr. President. these countries understand that there's no consensus on the Pact for the Future because largely of the lack of political willingness of those same countries to enter into good faith negotiations over the last 18 months on various issues that are so controversial and critical for very many other countries. They continue to prefer to drive forward a course of action that aims to ignore the very existence
en el curso de las negociaciones y nunca fue tomada en cuenta.
and it was never taken
En su
into
forma
account.
actual, el pacto es selectivo en el tratamiento de los distintos principios contenidos en la Carta de la ONU y no se refiere en ningún momento al sagrado principio de no intervención en los asuntos internos de los Estados contenido en el artículo 2.7 de la Carta de la ONU. Señor Presidente, conscientes de esta realidad y de conformidad con lo dispuesto en el artículo 74 del reglamento de la Asamblea General, quisiéramos instar muy respetuosamente a todos los Estados miembros a que voten en contra de esta moción de no acción y a que posteriormente voten a favor de la enmienda contenida en el documento A/79/L.3. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
I thank the representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I call on the representative of Belarus to take the floor.
Господин председатель, благодарю за предоставленное слово. Делегация Беларуси обращается к Высокому собранию с просьбой рассмотреть по существу поправку, содержащуюся в документе А/79/L3. Спасибо за внимание.
I thank the representative of Belarus. We have heard an objection to the motion by the representative of the Congo. I shall now put to a recorded vote the motion submitted by the representative of Congo that no action be taken on draft amendment A/79/L3. Those in favor of the motion, please signify. Against? Abstentions?
The General Assembly is now voting on the motion submitted by the representative of the Congo that no action be taken on draft amendment A/79/L3. Press the green button to vote in favor of the motion by the Congo that no action be taken on the amendment. Press the red button to vote against the motion by the Congo that no action be taken on the amendment. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows. Please listen carefully. The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 143. Against, 7. Abstentions, 15. The motion is adopted. Since the motion for no action on the draft amendment is adopted, the Assembly will proceed to to take action on the draft resolution. The Assembly will now proceed to consider draft resolution A/79/L2. I give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. President. The present oral statement on draft resolution L2 is made in the context of Rule 153 of the Rules of Procedure. The full statement has been distributed to Member States. Pursuant to requests contained in paragraph 34C, 41C, 57A, 81A and B, 83E of the Pact for the Future, additional resources in the range of 1.5 to 1.8 million, excluding staff assessment, would be required for the 2025, for which details would be included in a revised estimates report to be presented at the main part of the 79th session of the General Assembly. Regarding the request contained in paragraph 37F and 42B of the Pact, it is envisaged that additional resources would be required for 2025. The Secretary General would, following consultations, submit resource requirements for 2025 in the revised estimates report. The Secretariat will further assess if paragraph 76 and 78B could give rise to budgetary implications. Additional resources which may be required for 2026 and subsequent years, pursuant to requests contained in paragraph 37F, 41C, 42B, 57A, 74A, and 81B of the Pact, would be presented in the proposed program budgets in the applicable years. With regard to the request contained in paragraph 48 and 72 of the Compact, it is envisaged that additional resources would be required for 2025. The Secretary General would, following consultations, including with Member States, submit a proposal on the resource requirements for 2025 for consideration by the Assembly during the 79th session. And with regard to the request contained in paragraph 56A, 56B, and 74 of the Compact, it is not possible to estimate implications at this time in the absence of modalities. When the modalities are determined, the Secretary General would assess implications in accordance with the Rule 153. Additional resources which may be required for 2026 and subsequent years, pursuant to requests contained in paragraph 48 and 72 of the Compact, would be presented in the proposed program budget in the applicable years. With regard to the request contained in the third subparagraph, paragraph 43 of the Declaration of Future Generations, it is not possible to estimate implications of this time owing the absence of the modalities. When the modalities are determined, Secretary General would assess the implication in accordance with Rule 153. And pursuant to request contained in the fourth subparagraph, paragraph 43 of the Declaration, additional resources would be required for 2028, for which details would be included in the proposed program budget for 2028. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. Before proceeding further, members are reminded that pursuant to Decision 78/555, any explanation of vote on the outcome document shall be incorporated into national statements instead of being made at the opening segment. Furthermore, as indicated in the letter from the President of the General Assembly, dated 4th September 2024, Member States are encouraged to use the debate on Agenda Item 123, scheduled for 7th October 2024, to put on record any further views on the elements of the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/79/L2 entitled The Pact for the Future. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/79/L2? It is so decided. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Her Excellency Antje Liendest, Permanent Representative of Germany, and His Excellency Neville Getz, Permanent Representative of Namibia. Her Excellency Anna Karin Enestrom, Permanent Representative of Sweden. His Excellency Chola Milambo, Permanent Representative of Zambia. His Excellency Brian Wallace, Permanent Representative of Jamaica. And Her Excellency Joka Brandt, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, who ably and patiently conducted discussions and complex negotiations on the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. I also express my sincere thanks to His Excellency Thomas Zarneysen, Chargé d'Affaires ad interim of the Permanent Mission of Germany, for his work in the final stage of the process. Finally, I wish to recognize the hard work of the teams that supported the 6 co-facilitators over multiple sessions, including Agnes Julin, Audrey Gatana Namases, Cornelia Jarash, Ernst Royder Marcel, Jan Bush, Johan Shekeni, Julia Fielding, Marcus Kreft, Moses Jere, Regelia Voges, Sevelina Ashipal, Tilman Scherf, Yannick Da Costa, and many more. I am sure members of the Assembly will join me in extending to them our sincere appreciation. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we gather today representing the peoples of the world, united by our shared aspirations for the future. Our future is in our hands. We have the power to make important choices for the future. We stand at crossroads of global transformation, facing unprecedented challenges that demand urgent collective action. From conflict and climate change to the digital divide, from inequalities to threats against human rights, together we all face profound challenges. Yet, alongside these challenges, there is hope. There is hope because challenges come along with opportunities. The opportunity for renewal, innovation, and global cooperation is within reach. Our Summit of the Future has given us a pact. The Pact for the Future, just adopted, represents our pledge not only to address immediate crises, but lay the foundations for a sustainable, just, and peaceful global order for all peoples and nations. The commitments embodied in the Pact and its annexes reflect the collective will of member states and must guide our actions and encourage us to promote international peace and security, invigorate implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, foster just and inclusive societies, and ensure that technologies always serve the common good of humankind. We must move forward together in a spirit of solidarity and multilateral cooperation. The Summit of the Future is a call to action. We must shape our future to protect ourselves and our planet Earth. Action that recommits us to the principles of international law, the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the promise of the United Nations Charter to save future generations from the pain of war. The path we choose must lead to a future where human dignity is respected and human rights are upheld. A future where peace transcends the mere absence of conflict and is grounded in justice, inclusion, and equity. Excellencies, our mission is to eradicate poverty in all its forms, tackle inequalities, and promote peace and security, tolerance, and respect for diversity. The summit offers a historic opportunity to ensure that progress is shared equitably across all nations and communities elsewhere. We have an obligation to harness the power of science, technology, and innovation in order to prepare the future of humankind. It is also important that we reproduce our human successes across generations all the time. Let us continue our efforts to reform and strengthen global institutions that support peace, security, sustainable development, and financial stability. Meaningful progress requires that all voices are heard and that all nations, regardless of size or wealth, have a seat at the table. The United Nations is the organization where all nations have a seat at the table. Throughout, we must recognize that none of our goals will be achieved without the full participation of women and girls. Advancing gender equality across all sectors of society will be of decisive significance. Equally, we must acknowledge the vital role of young people in shaping our future, ensuring their voices are heard, their rights protected, and their potential realized. Our youth are the torchbearers of tomorrow. This is especially true in Africa, where more young people will enter the workforce each year than in the rest of the world combined. Together, let us rise to this moment with courage and determination as we accelerate our journey towards a brighter future for everyone, everywhere. I thank you. I now give the floor to His Excellency Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Summit of the Future. I thank the co-facilitators, the former and current presidents of the General Assembly and all member states for their strong engagement, creativity, and spirit of compromise, and all my colleagues for their invaluable efforts over the past 3 years. We are here to bring multilateralism back from the brink. I called for this summit to consider deep reforms to make global institutions more legitimate, fair, and effective based on the values of the UN Charter. I called for this summit Because 21st century challenges require 21st century solutions, frameworks that are networked and inclusive, and that draw on the expertise of all of humanity. I called for this summit because our world is heading off the rails, and we need tough decisions to get back on track. Conflicts are raging and multiplying, from the Middle East to Ukraine and Sudan with no end in sight. Our collective security system is threatened by geopolitical divides, nuclear posturing, and the development of new weapons and theaters of war. Resources that could bring opportunities and hope are invested in death and destruction. Huge inequalities are a brake on sustainable development. Many developing countries are drowning in debt and unable to support their people. And we have no effective global response to emerging, complex, and even existential threats. The climate crisis is destroying lives, devastating communities, and ravaging economies. And we all know the solution: a just phase out of fossil fuels, and yet emissions are still rising. New technologies, including AI, are being developed in a moral and legal vacuum without governance or guardrails. And in short, our multilateral tools and institutions are unable to respond effectively to today's political, economic, environmental, and technological challenges. And tomorrow's will be even more difficult and even more dangerous. When the United Nations was established nearly 8 years ago, it had 51 member states. Today they are 193. The global economy was less than 1/12 of its current size. As a result, our peace and security tools and institutions and our global financial architecture reflect a bygone era. The United Nations Security Council is outdated, and its authority is eroding. And unless its composition and working methods are reformed, it will eventually lose all credibility. The international financial architecture was established when many of today's developing countries were under colonial rule. It does not represent the realities of today's global economy and is no longer able to resolve economic challenges, debt, climate action, sustainable development. It does not provide the global safety net that developing countries need. Meanwhile, technology, geopolitics, and globalization have transformed power relations. Our world is going through a time of turbulence and a period of transition. But we cannot wait for perfect conditions. We must take the first decisive steps towards updating and reforming international cooperation and make it more networked, more fair, and more inclusive now. And today, thanks to your efforts, we have. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations open pathways to new possibilities and opportunities. On peace and security, they promise a breakthrough on reforms to make the Security Council more reflective of today's world, addressing the historic underrepresentation of Africa, Asia-Pacific, and Latin America. They lay the foundations for a more agile peace-building commission and for a fundamental review of peace operations to make them fit for the conditions they face. They represent the first agreed multilateral support for nuclear disarmament in more than a decade. They recognize the changing nature of conflict and commit to steps to prevent an arms race in outer space and to govern the use of lethal autonomous weapons. They include measures to mount an immediate and coordinated response to complex global shocks. On sustainable development, these agreements represent major progress towards groundbreaking reforms of the international financial architecture. They will help to make its institutions more representative of today's world, capable of mounting a stronger response to today's challenges, and able to provide an effective global safety net for developing countries at a time when many of them are suffocating in debt and unable to make progress on the SDGs. The Pact for the Future is about turbocharging the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, accelerating a just transition away from fossil fuels, and securing a peaceful and livable future for everyone on our planet. It includes a groundbreaking commitment by governments to listen to young people and include them in decision-making at the national and global levels. And it commits to stronger partnerships with civil society, the private sector, local and regional authorities, and more. The Global Digital Compact is based on the principle that technology should benefit everyone. It includes the first truly universal agreement on the international governance of artificial intelligence. It commits governments to establishing an independent international scientific panel on AI and initiating a global dialogue on its governance within the United Nations. The Global Digital Compact represents the first collective effort to reach agreed interoperability standards essential for consistent measurement. And it supports networks and partnerships to build capacity on AI in developing countries. And the Declaration on Future Generations echoes the call of the United Nations Charter to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, committing governments for the first time to taking the interest of our descendants into account in decisions we take today. Respect for human rights, cultural diversity, and gender equality are woven into all three agreements. In the face of a surge in misogyny and the rollback of women's reproductive rights, governments have explicitly committed to removing the legal, social, and economic barriers that prevent women and girls from fulfilling their potential in every sphere.
Excellencies,
je salue les trois accords
I welcome these three historic
qui marquent un
agreements,
tournant vers un
which mark a
multilatéralisme
shift
plus
toward
efficace,
that is more
plus inclusif
effective, more inclusive,
et
and that
fonctionnant
is more
plus en réseau.
network-based in its functioning.
Je me suis battu
I
pour
fought
les
for
idées
the ideas
portées par ces
contained in these
accords
agreements since the
depuis le
very
tout premier
first
jour
day
de mon mandat.
of my mandate.
Et je
And I
serai
will be
pleinement
totally
engagé
committed
dans leur
to
mise
their
en œuvre
implementation
jusqu'au tout dernier
until the
jour.
very last day.
Nous avons ouvert la porte.
We have
Il
unlocked
nous
the
incombe
door. Now
désormais
it is
à
our common
toutes et à tous
responsibility
de la franchir,
to walk through it.
car il ne s'agit pas seulement
That
de s'entendre, mais
requires not
aussi
just
d'agir.
agreement, but action.
Et aujourd'hui, je vous mets au
Today,
défi de
I
passer à
challenge you
l'action,
to take that
de mettre
action,
en
to
œuvre le
implement the
pacte
pact
pour
for the
l'avenir
future by
en privilégiant le
prioritizing
dialogue et la
dialogue
négociation,
and negotiation,
en mettant fin aux guerres qui
ending
déchirent
the
le
wars
monde
that are tearing
et en
our
réformant
world
la
apart and
composition
reforming the
et les méthodes de
composition and
travail
working
du
methods
Conseil de
of the Security
sécurité.
Council.
D'accélérer
To
la
accelerate
réforme du
reforms
système
of the
financier
international
international,
financial system,
notamment à l'occasion de la
including at
conférence
next year's
sur le
conference
financement
on
du
financing for
développement
development,
qui se tiendra l'année prochaine. De placer les
to
nouvelles
put
technologies au
humanity's
service
best
de l'intérêt
interests at the
supérieur de
front and
l'humanité,
center of new
ce qui
technologies.
détermine notre succès ou échec.
Our success or
Ce n'est pas
failure
l'adoption d'accords,
hinges not on the
mais bien
adoption of
nos
agreements,
actions et leur impact
but on our
sur la
actions
vie des
and their
populations
impact
que
on
nous
the
servons.
lives of the people that we serve.
Excellences,
Excellencies,
tout au long de ma vie,
throughout my life,
que ce soit en tant que
whether as an
militant politique
activist
ou aux Nations
or at the United
Unies,
Nations,
j'ai appris
I
que
have
les gens
learned
ne sont
that
jamais
people
d'accord sur le
never
passé.
agree on the past.
Pour rétablir la
To
confiance,
rebuild
nous
trust,
devons
we must
partir du
start
présent
from the
et
present
regarder vers
and
l'avenir.
look toward the future.
Et partout dans le monde, les gens
Throughout the world,
aspirent à la
people
paix,
are hoping
à
for
la
a future
dignité
of
et à la
peace,
prospérité.
dignity, and
Ils
prosperity.
réclament une
They're
mobilisation
crying out
mondiale
for global
pour régler
action
la
to
crise
solve
climatique,
the climate crisis,
lutter contre les
tackle
inégalités
inequality,
et faire face aux
and
risques
address new
nouveaux
and
et
emerging
émergents
risks
qui
that
menacent
threaten
l'humanité.
everyone.
Et ils considèrent
And
que
they
l'ONU
see the
est
United
indispensable
Nations
pour
as being
résoudre ces
essential to
défis.
solving these
Tout
challenges.
cela a été
All
confirmé
this was confirmed
pendant les 2
during
journées
the past
d'action
two
inspirantes qui
inspirational
viennent de se
action
dérouler.
days.
Le sommet de l'avenir trace la voie pour une coopération internationale qui soit à la hauteur de leurs attentes. Alors que nous franchissons ensemble cette première étape cruciale, je tiens à féliciter tous les États membres pour leur contribution. Maintenant, mettons-nous au travail et je vous remercie.
I thank the Secretary General. In accordance with Resolution 76/307, we will now hear from youth representatives. I now give the floor to Mr. Ghanim Mohammed Al Mufta from Qatar.
Falling down.
There we go. Is this okay?
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, and special guests. I am Ghanem Al-Muftah, a UN youth representative from Qatar and a political science graduate with a noteworthy passion for global rights for all. I am honored to meet you leaders, head of states, and individuals in high positions at the Summit of the Future. If you allow me, I will share some personal insights with you, but not as leaders, but as fathers, mothers, and guardians, family-focused people who care deeply about the future of all children and the generations that follow. The decisions that we make today are not just about policies and strategies. They are about shaping a world where all children can thrive in an inclusive, safe, and sustainable future. I am a perfect example of my parents' dreams for me 22 years ago. I stand before you here today, proudly representing hope from yesterday's dreams, which will continue to carry me to my future. I have been raised with strong family values, where our home model was built on believing in yourself to manifest confidence for your future. As a person with disability, I have learned that true progress comes not from overcoming personal challenges alone, but from how we, as a society, embrace each other's differences. As I look around the room, I don't see anyone else like me. But you have accepted my differences without prejudice, gender, nationality, race, or religion. You have accepted all of me. This must be the way we conduct our tomorrow, where inclusivity is a fundamental right, not a luxury, where every individual can contribute to the common good of the future, no matter our differences. It is my destiny to be born with disability. I chose to accept it. But sadly, there is no choice for children where wars and conflicts cause unnecessary injuries and lifelong disabilities. The future for these children and families can tear away hope. 22 years ago, when my mother was told that I was hopeless and going to die, she only listened to her heart. She wrote a book, I Am Here. 22 years later, I'm still here, sharing my life experiences to lend others hope and to give a voice to the unheard. There are more than 1 billion people with disabilities around the world. If they allow me, I unite with them to say, we raise our voices to stop these unexpected disabilities worldwide where peace is unseen. It is in our hands to stop this global trend of violences in Gaza and around the world. We must end the suffering today so that a clearer tomorrow can be seen. We are all leaders here. A leader's role is to listen to the people. We must understand what the people want and address their voices through platforms like this to drive meaningful change. The future belongs to our youth. We must ensure that they are prepared to take on leadership roles in order to be the change makers. You must be the change you wish to see in this world. I wish all distinguished delegates and special guests a successful summit as we move forward to a new day of possibilities. Thank you so much.
I thank Mr. Al-Mufta. I now give the floor to Ms. Niria Alicia Garcia from the United States.
Tonansin, way tonansin, way tonansin, tonansin, way tonansin. With the permission of the Creator, the Lenape ancestors of these lands, and with the permission of your hearts, it is an honor to address you today, my dear relatives. First and foremost, I want to give thanks to the spirit world, to Father Sun, to Mother Earth. Gratitude to the plants and animals, the sacred waters, the sacred places who gave humanity the sacred knowledge and understanding that made it possible for us to coexist in balance with creation for thousands of years. I bow to you and your ancestors, because we all descend from these good people who walked on Mother Earth in a good way. And I'm calling on them today for guidance. Why? Because our Mother Earth is hurting and she needs our help. Worldwide, our waters and sacred places are being desecrated. Corporate greed and war are pushing life to the verge of extinction. Global governments and politics are void of spirituality, of morality, and basic respect for life. My generation's hearts are breaking as we survive the impacts of climate disaster that could have been prevented. Breaking as we watch genocide of our Palestinian relatives live on our phones, despite the global call for a ceasefire. The Pact for the Future mentions words like sustainable development nearly 300 times, yet words like children, earth, and future generations are mentioned less than 60 times. This is green colonialism, and it needs to stop. Only one mention of local communities, 0 mentions of plants and animals, 0 mentions of frontline communities, and 0 mentions of indigenous rights. So I ask you today, do indigenous people still not exist to you? Are we not the stewards of 80% of the world's biodiversity? My relatives, I guarantee you that the continued exclusion of indigenous people, local and frontline communities, will inevitably lead to more destruction, pain, and suffering. Yet there is hope. because we are still here. And the world needs the leadership of indigenous people and of youth now more than ever. Collectively, we have the ancestral technologies, indigenous knowledges, and spiritualities to create real intergenerational solutions. Our cosmologies have the wisdom and power to guide humanity towards that good path again. But in order to do that, indigenous people must have equal representations as member states in all UN bodies. So I say to you today, global leaders, go home and ratify the United Nations declarations on the rights of indigenous people. Acknowledge and apologize and build authentic relationships with your indigenous people. Begin to meaningfully engage your youth. Go home and cut your military budgets and allocate those funds for climate solutions, to pay reparations, to pay for losses and damages we've experienced as a generation that is inheriting a devastated Mother Earth. Go home and ask your indigenous youth, respected elders, how much money we need to bring our solutions to life. And then go home and create the unrestricted funds to support indigenous people in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals on our terms. Global leaders, go home and give indigenous people our land back. To my indigenous youth and children of the world, we are so desperately needed at this time. We must join forces with our respected elders and keep fighting for a livable future. Our generation's biggest responsibility in these times is to not give up and not give in to hopelessness. We must stand to protect the sacred. We must stand to protect our sacred fires, our ceremonies, our songs, our prayers. We must speak our language, wear our traditional clothes, and be proud of who we are. Make no mistake that we have the medicine that this world needs, and that with the help of creation, we will turn the tide for good for the next 7 generations of all life forms to come. Tlaso Kamati, O Meteo.
I thank Ms. Garcia. I now give the floor to Ms. Monica Malit from South Sudan.
Esteemed world leaders, excellencies, and distinguished guests, I am Monica Malit. It is both an honor and a privilege to address you today at the opening of the Summit of the Future. As I begin, my question to everyone today is, what encounters your eyes if you talk about the future? What voices overwhelms your ears? What test lies in your tongue? Of hope, of action, of collaboration, of inclusion, or of transformation. Our world is at crossroads, confronted by uncertainties and challenges that cross borders, regions, and communities. Among the most pressing issues are the escalating refugee crisis. If left unaddressed, this will destabilize societies, hinder growth, and sow divisions. Reflecting on my own experiences, living South Sudan with only one language to speak, I had to struggle in a class with people who were 3 years in class before me. Kenya, a land of refuge, turned to be a land of where I thrived. Through the gates of education, it's opened its heart. The University of Nairobi gave me a chance to rise, to lead, and to speak for the voiceless, not just as a student, but as a student's president. A refugee crowned with the trust of a nation, my journey, not just of books and lectures, but of forging a future where the silent speak. With the right resources, I secured the Albert Einstein German Scholarship. The support of UNHCR and Kenya granted me access to education, to thrive, to pursue knowledge, and turn dreams into tangible realities. Now, the weight of my law degree, I stand as a voice for the youth, for the refugees, and for all those forgotten. Through my journey, I learned that it is not enough to receive degrees. We need to exemplify leadership for us to thrive. And we lose it out when we let the youth and the refugees especially go unnoticed, unsupported, and unchampioned for. The flight of refugees underscores our collective responsibilities. Individuals like me, displaced by conflict, environmental disasters, and economic uncertainties, seek refuge, security, and a chance for a better life, not to be pitied. It is our collective duty to provide not just immediate assistance, but also long-term, compassionate solutions that uphold the dignity of refugees and enable their meaningful contribution to the society. Education remains a powerful tool for progress regardless of the constant cut down in education funding across the world. It equips individuals with the skills and knowledge to navigate a complex world with limited opportunities. For developing nations and emerging economies, investing in education is crucial for sustainable growth. We must ensure that education is accessible, equitable, and aligned with the future workforce demands. And for this, I want governments and key stakeholders in the education sector to think big on funding for education. In a world where world leaders openly make negative comments about refugees, none of us chose to be a refugee, and anyone can become a refugee. Without peace, there can be no safety nor development. Without security, there can be no stability. Without stability, education falters and nations fail. As we embark on this journey, let's envision a world and a future where it is shaped by cooperations, understanding, and shared purpose. Let today mark the beginning of a deeper collaboration, stronger institutions, and renewed commitment to creating a world where every individual has the opportunity to thrive. And to our world leaders, I'm very grateful that I have a chance to stand before you today and address you directly. The gaps are growing wider. The structures are rusting. While you talk of reforms, our future deliberations must not be rehearsed platitudes, but revolutions of thoughts. This summit, this moment, it is supposed to mend the fractures in our trust, to build a future where cooperation thrives. And to the youth, the future is ours to forge, not theirs to cling to, not theirs to pass down like spoils of war, because there are those who went for the war but were left in the war. It belongs to the bold, those who speak, even when silence is expected. It belongs to those who demand more justice, more equity, and more humanity. Thank you so much.
I thank Ms. Malith. In accordance with Decision 78/564B, the opening segment also features statements by the President of the Republic of Namibia and the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany in lieu of the national statements from the plenary list of speakers. I invite His Excellency Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all the previous speakers, especially the youth representatives, for their important input. It is for them, the youth around the world, that we have come together today. It is about their hopes for a better world. It's about their future. A special word of gratitude goes to you, Mr. President. Your leadership has proven of vital importance. At a time of great tension and uncertainty, we need the pact for the future more than ever. The previous speakers have already explained how deeply our fates are linked by the global challenges we are facing. War, climate change, poverty and hunger, impediments to free and fair trade, global health threats, technological developments such as AI, which, as well as huge opportunities, also harbor the potential for abuse and for exacerbating economic imbalances. The pact does not just acknowledge these challenges. It expresses our commitment to confronting them, not alone, not one by one, but together, East and West, North and South. The Pact for the Future can serve as a compass for us, a compass whose needle points towards more cooperation and partnership instead of towards more conflict and fragmentations. A compass guiding us to a more just, inclusive and cooperative world. The Pact shows our determination to restore trust in our common institutions. It shows that all the talk of division, polarization and uncertainty will not be the end of the story of the United Nations. Because we still cooperate. We are still placing trust in one another. We are still committed to the principles of the Charter. And we are still willing to treat each other with respect and fairness. Respect and fairness, these principles have also been guiding us, Namibia and Germany, as co-facilitators of this pact. We come from different continents. Our political and socio-economic situations differ. And yet we manage to work together as friends. Thank you, President Mbumba, for your friendship and for the excellent cooperation. I also wish to thank everyone who helped us to carry the negotiations so far. The text before us today is the achievement of the countless men and women who overcome fatigue, the occasional feeling of frustration, political and ideological divides to achieve this global consensus today. You have proved that multilateralism is alive, that we can find common ground. Let's take steps towards a world that is safe, just, equal, inclusive, sustainable, prosperous, and above all, peaceful. The pact outlines what those steps are, over 50 of them. Not only history would judge us if we didn't take them, but also young people around the world. The road is rocky, but what was that ever any different? Germany will extend its hand to anyone who wants to walk this road with us. Let's get moving. The future starts now. Thank you.
I thank the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. I invite His Excellency Nangolo Mbumba, President of the Republic of Namibia, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency Philemon Yang, 79th President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, Excellencies, Your Excellency Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, representative of the youth, distinguished delegates. Today we gathered at this Summit of the Future to adopt, and which we have done already, a pact for the future, which our countries painstakingly negotiated over the past 18 months. We all are differently impacted by the weight of this historic moment for our global community under the United Nations. There is an African proverb that says, and I quote, "Tomorrow belongs to the people who plan for it today," end of quote. The Summit of the Future is a pivotal moment in our quest to shape a brighter, more just, sustainable, and peaceful common future for all humanity. It is a further commitment to bequeath to the current and future generations a world at peace with itself, a world in which all countries and peoples are prosperous, and a world that is more loving, more inclusive, and tolerant. At this critical juncture, the scale and degree of compounding challenges of poverty, hunger, climate change, economic inequality, conflict, and public health crisis may seem unsurmountable. However, this summit equally presents a historic opportunity for the nations of the world to combine their strength and resources and confront these crises head-on. Today, the world is at a crossroad. One path leads to an environmental catastrophe, widening inequality, global conflict and destruction, and the rise of dangerous technologies that threaten our security and civil liberties. The other path offers hope. Hope for climate change, global peace, the eradication of poverty and hunger, and the responsible harnessing of digital technologies for the benefit of all humanity. Therefore, the Summit of the Future is a timely and urgent call to action, urging us to choose the path of peace, prosperity, and sustainable development for all. The world of 1945, where the United Nations was established in San Francisco to promote unity among nations under the rubric of "We, the peoples," is contrastingly different from the world of 2024. So much has changed. As a result, we as leaders are once again called upon by destiny to come together and forge a brighter future for our peoples. To forge a brighter tomorrow for people and planet, we must be courageous to reform international organizations, including the United Nations and its Security Council. A new multilateralism, one that truly works, must rest on 4 key pillars of UN reform. First, the UN must empower nations and regions to adopt comprehensive pathways to provide economic opportunities and prosperity, underpinned by environmental sustainability. Second, the UN must strengthen global agreements and institutions to ensure the effective implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thirdly, the UN must be equipped to finance these goals through an innovative global financial architecture. Fourth, we must harness the incredible advancement in science and technology for the common good, while being ever vigilant against the misuse of innovation such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and geoengineering. The Pact for the Future set out key global priorities for humanity, which are sustainable development and financing, international peace and security, science, technology, and innovation, the empowerment of youth and future generations, and global governance. I extend heartfelt congratulations to the respective facilitators and all member states of the United Nations for this profound accomplishment. The Summit of the Future, under the able leadership of the permanent representatives of Germany and Namibia, has been a collective effort over the past 18 months to build consensus and restore trust, and to reinforce the principles of dialogue, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Excellencies, we need the UN because at the heart of this institution is a simple yet profound principle. Global problems require global solutions. It remains the most effective way to achieve peace, security, and prosperity. The Namibian government recognizes the profound significance of this summit for the future, for our planet, to meet the targets set forth in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. Sustainable development must be our guiding principle, summarized by 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. People signify our commitment to leave no one behind. Planet signifies the urgent need to live within planetary boundaries. Prosperity calls for extending the benefits of modern education and technology to all. Peace in the nuclear age requires nations to live together under international law and the UN Charter. Partnership between governments, civil society, and business are essential to achieving our shared goals. We must leave this summit with renewed commitments and concrete action plans to eradicate poverty, eliminate hunger, tackle climate change, and build a global economy that works for all. Future generations will judge us not by our words, but by our actions. Excellencies, guided by the principles of the UN Charter, we must reaffirm our commitment towards peaceful coexistence and shared development. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the opportunity to shape a better world. I am confident that together we can rise to the occasion and seize this moment in history for a brighter future that is peaceful, just, and sustainable. I thank you very much.
I thank the President of the Republic of Namibia. We have heard the last speaker for the opening segment. Before giving the floor to the first speaker on the list of speakers, delegations are reminded that statements are limited to 5 minutes for participating states and 3 minutes for other statements. Pursuant to Rule 72 of the Rules of Procedure, when a representative exceeds her or his allotted time, the President shall call the Speaker to order without delay, which will be done by means of automatic microphone cutoff. In accordance with Resolution 72/313, the all protocol observed principle is recommended, whereby participants are encouraged to refrain from listing standard protocol expressions during their statements. I would like to appeal to speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace so that interpretation into the other official United Nations languages may be provided properly. The list of speakers for each meeting shall be completed, and no speaker will be rolled over to the next meeting. Speakers who are not present when their speaking turn comes will be automatically moved to the next available speaking slot within their category at the same time. Finally, after the Secretary General's departure, the Secretary General's seat at the podium may be occupied by his representative. If I hear no objection, we shall proceed accordingly. It is so decided. Members are also reminded, in accordance with Resolution 76/307, 4 interactive dialogues will take place in the Trusteeship Council chamber in parallel to the plenary meetings. The first interactive dialogue has already started at 10 a.m. I invite His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, to address the Assembly.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, the Secretary General of the United Nations, colleagues, heads of state and government, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the G7 plus countries, a group of nations bound together by a shared history of experiencing the horrors of conflict and the challenges of fragility, with an unwavering commitment to peace, stability, resilience, and sustainable development. This summit represents an important moment for reflection, collective action, and renewed commitment to building a sustainable, just, and equitable future. As countries deeply affected by conflict and post-conflict circumstances, we understand all too well the cost of instability. The urgency of a united global response to build a future of peace, prosperity, and justice is a shared responsibility that cannot be overstated. For us, these challenges are neither theoretical nor distant. They are the stark reality that we contend with every day. Our countries have endured and continue to endure fragility, conflict, and violence. Still, we stand here united as by a shared hope and common purpose, the pursuit of sustainable peace and development. Today, we stand at the crossroads of history. As this summit of the future has offered us an opportunity to adopt the pact of the future, a transformative roadmap for a more inclusive, secure, and sustainable world. This pact gives us hope and inspiration for a better future. Mr. President, allow me to put forward 6 points to help in situating the G7+ countries in the pact for the future implementation. 1, the call for national ownership and inclusive government. The G7+ was founded on the principle that peace and development must be driven from within. We advocate for national ownership of development processes and insist that efforts to address fragility must be grounded in dialogue, reconciliation, and inclusive governance. 2, promoting sustainable development in conflict-affected countries. The SDGs represent a shared vision for a better world. But for the G7+ countries, progress remains hindered by persistent challenges of fragility. Sustainable development and financing for development is essential towards addressing the unique needs of fragile and conflict-affected states. Therefore, we call for increased international cooperation, innovative financing mechanisms, and tailored approaches to ensure that no country is left behind. 3, fostering international peace and security. International peace and security form the bedrock of global development. For countries recovering from conflict, achieving peace is not a singular event, but a continuous process of strengthening institutions, promoting the rule of law, and addressing the root causes.
I thank the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. I invite His Excellency Rashad Mohammed Al-Alimi, President of the Presidential Leadership Council of the Republic of Yemen, to address the Assembly.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Excellencies, Majesties, Your Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, I value this opportunity to address you today at such an important event where we together renew our joint commitment to the principles of international solidarity, mutual respect, and close cooperation. These are the principles upon which this organization was founded. Yemen's experience over the past decade has been full of suffering and difficult challenges caused by the war by the Iranian terrorist Houthi militias which have wreaked havoc and caused destruction in many aspects of life. Therefore, our priorities may seem different from those of most of your countries, especially those countries that enjoy peace and stability. However, our aspirations are unified in that we hope for a prosperous future that all of our peoples deserve. Yemen today is one of the greatest humanitarian crises in the world, and it is further hindered by the aspects of war on all aspects of its life, including its inability to fulfill the SDGs and achieve sustainable development. However, despite these great challenges, the Yemeni people remain steadfast and determined in their quest for a better future. The reasons for this steadfastness is the result of the strength of our people, men and women, in confronting these militias and the constant support that the Yemeni government is receiving from the coalition to support diplomacy under the leadership of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and their regional and international partners, as well as funding organizations and agencies, especially the IMF and the World Bank. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, amidst these difficulties and these disasters, I would like to deliver to you some good news that we have witnessed recently. Our efforts have recently succeeded in contracting the international Starlink company to provide satellite internet services to our citizens, so that Yemen is one of the pioneering countries in the region in offering this service. And we are relying on this service to enhance the exchange of information and the spreading of knowledge in order for women, young women and men to achieve and receive education remotely and to prevent them from being recruited towards violence and extremism. And I wanted to tell you this because we are working on dealing with the war and creating hope, and we are doing this by working in three different aspects. First of all, we are trying to confront violence and aggressive thought and extremism. Second, we are trying to remedy the severe repercussions of the wars. And third, we are seeking to keep up with the future as much as possible, because we believe that the generations that were born in conflict have the right to grow up with better futures for peace and development and prosperity. We take part in the Summit of the Future today, and we are full of hope that we can prove that with your support and encouragement, as countries that are going through conflict and institutional fragility, these countries are able to keep up with international progress as long as the necessary innovative thought is there to keep up with the rest. The Presidential Leadership Council has been working with the government for the past two years to keep up with the Summit of the Future agenda in terms of enhancing technology in the world as a human right, or through empowering women and youth, for whom we have launched an ambitious program to develop skills in the temporary capital Aden, as well as an expanded conference that was held in Paris dealing with this topic. Despite the war and the financing crisis that was exacerbated by the terrorist Houthi attacks on oil installations, we are achieving amazing steadfastness with the support of our brothers in fulfilling our requirements and in putting forth ideas and projects that would achieve a certain degree of sustainability. Here we are working with members of the international community to put together a strategy on Yemen that is based on moving from relief to sustainable development, and in dealing seriously with the agenda of youth and the future, just as we care for the agenda to end the conflict and achieve a comprehensive peace. In Yemen, the humanitarian crisis is growing larger because of the climate change. Our country is dealing with extreme climate aspects such as drought and flood and rising temperatures. The microphone has been cut off.
I thank the President of the Presidential Leadership Council of the Republic of Yemen I invite His Excellency Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, to address the Assembly.
I would like to thank the Secretary-General Antonio Guterres for the initiative to promote this Summit of the Future. I congratulate Germany and Namibia through Chancellor Olaf Scholz and President Angolo Mbamba for leading the process that brought us here. Almost 20 years ago, the then Secretary-General Kofi Annan invited us to think about how to revigorate multilateralism to face the challenges of the new millennium.
Naquela ocasião, ressaltei nesta tribuna a necessidade de reformas para que a ONU pudesse cumprir seu papel histórico. Aquela reflexão conjunta rendeu frutos, como a Comissão de Consolidação da Paz e o Conselho dos Direitos Humanos. Outras ideias não saíram do papel. Temos duas grandes responsabilidades perante aqueles que nos sucederão. A primeira é nunca retroceder. Não podemos recuar na promoção da igualdade de gênero, nem na luta contra o racismo e todas as formas de discriminação. Tampouco podemos voltar a conviver com ameaças nucleares. É inaceitável regredir ao mundo dividido em fronteiras ideológicas ou zonas de influência. Naturalizar a fome de 733 milhões de pessoas seria vergonhoso. Voltar atrás em nossos compromissos é colocar em xeque tudo que construímos tão arduamente. Os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável foram o maior empreendimento diplomático dos últimos anos e caminha para se tornarem o nosso maior fracasso coletivo. No ritmo atual de implementação, apenas 17% das metas da Agenda 2030 serão atingidas dentro do prazo. Na presidência do G20, o Brasil lançará uma aliança global contra a fome e a pobreza para acelerar a superação desses flagelos. Na COP28 do Clima, o mundo realizou um balanço global da implementação das metas do Acordo de Paris. Os níveis atuais de redução de emissão de gases de efeito estufa e financiamento climático são insuficientes para manter o planeta seguro. Em parceria com o secretário-geral, como preparação para a COP30, vamos trabalhar por um balanço ético global, reunindo diversos setores da sociedade civil para pensar a ação climática sob o prisma da justiça, da equidade e da solidariedade. Nossa segunda responsabilidade comum é abrir caminho diante dos novos riscos e oportunidades. O pacto para o futuro nos aponta a direção a seguir. O documento trata de forma inédita temas importantes, como a dívida de países em desenvolvimento e a tributação internacional. A criação de uma instância de diálogo entre chefes de Estado e de governo e líderes de instituições financeiras internacionais promete recolocar a ONU no centro do debate econômico mundial. O Pacto Global Digital é um ponto de partida para uma governança digital inclusiva que reduza as assimetrias e uma economia baseada em dados e mitiga o impacto de novas tecnologias como a inteligência artificial. Todos esses avanços serão louváveis e significativos, mas ainda assim nos falta ambição e ousadia. A crise da governança global requer transformações estruturais. A pandemia, os conflitos na Europa e no Oriente Médio, a corrida armamentista e a mudança do clima escancaram as limitações das instâncias multilaterais. A maioria dos órgãos carece de autoridade e meios de implementação para fazer cumprir suas decisões. A Assembleia Geral perdeu sua vitalidade e o Conselho Econômico e Social foi esvaziado. A legitimidade do Conselho de Segurança encolhe a cada vez que ele aplica duplos padrões ou se omite diante de atrocidades. As instituições de Bretton Woods desconsideram as prioridades e a necessidade do mundo em desenvolvimento. O Sul Global não está representado de forma condizente com o seu atual peso político, econômico e demográfico.
The UN Charter.
I thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil.
We need courage and political will to change, creating today what we want for tomorrow. The best legacy we can leave for the future generations is governance framework capable of responding effectively to the challenges that persist and those that will arrive. Thank you very much.
I invite His Excellency Lazarus Mkati Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi and Commander-in-Chief of the Malawi Defense Forces, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency, Mr. Philemon Young, President of the 79th Session of the United Nations General Assembly, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, youth representatives, distinguished delegates. This is an historic gathering, for rarely do we make time to reflect on the tomorrow we are creating by our choices today, and rarely do we focus on creating multilateral solutions for problems that haven't yet occurred. As things stand, we are not likely to meet the targets we set for Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, because we seem more interested in moving with speed in destroying the future than we are in replenishing it. So now we must reflect on the extra gear we need to engage between now and 2030 to sustain the hope of young people all over the world that the old men and women in this assembly have what it takes to build solutions for a future that is not ours to inherit. This summit of the future is not about us, but about the next generation and their children, and we must make this pact of the future without rigging it with the prejudices of yesterday and the conflicts of today. Let me be blunt, Mr. President. Sustainable development is untenable without sustainable financing. As such, I call for urgency in remodeling development financing. I call for financing facilities that are more robust, inclusive, and humane. I call for financing that will categorize global development in developing countries, because the underdevelopment of LDCs is a drain on the potential of the Global South and the Global North alike. What this means is we must shift from the mere provision of aid to the cultivation of self-sufficiency through robust private sector engagement. I am deeply concerned that many conflicts around the world not only remain unresolved, but are actively being stroked towards escalation, even here at this 79th Assembly. I am sure that no one in this room still lives under the naive illusion that we live in a world where a war can be won, for that world does not exist anymore. We must pursue a rules-based approach that seeks peaceful solutions to disputes, for it is evident that the current multilateral system has proven significantly inadequate in resolving these conflicts. We recognize the global utility of artificial intelligence in terms of improving productivity and decision-making processes. However, the least developed countries are faced with significant challenges in coping with this unprecedented technological advancement. It is therefore imperative that the global world makes deliberate efforts to improve the capacity of LDCs to reduce the digital divide. In Malawi and invariably in the rest of Africa, the youth are not just our future, but they are our present as well. We therefore must exploit this demographic dividend by developing technical skills and harness the enormous potential of the youth in order for us to achieve this fourth industrial revolution. Malawi reiterates our call for comprehensive UN reforms in order to create a UN that is fit for the future through fair representation and enhanced capacity to deal with complicated global challenges while promoting sustainable development. Additionally, the global financial architecture is crucial for creating a sustainable future amidst rising debt levels. Mr. President, the future we build depends on our collective efforts, and we urge our member states to turn the tide toward a brighter and more just world. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Republic of Malawi and Commander-in-Chief of the Malawi Defense Forces. I invite His Excellency Sadir Zaparov, President of the Kyrgyz Republic, to address the Assembly.
Mr. Secretary General, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathering at a critical moment in the world history where the international system is facing difficulties. In an era of global change, we must reassess established methods of multilateral cooperation and take fundamental measures that will not only address current challenges but also lay a strong foundation for the well-being of future generations. As the Secretary General of the United Nations stated, universal problems require universal solutions. The Summit of the Future is a unique platform that will lay the groundwork for a new global architecture that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. Using this high platform, I invite all high-income donor countries to actively participate in the upcoming replenishment of the International Development Association of the World Bank. It is at the International Development Association and the similar organizations that provide important assistance to low-income countries, helping to eradicate poverty, develop infrastructure, and increase resilience to global challenges. My views align with the document SDG Stimulus to Deliver Agenda 2030, presented by the UN General Secretary General in February 2023, where the document outlines three main actions: addressing the issue of high debt costs and the growing risk of debt crisis, scaling up the accessible long-term development financing, and expanding emergency funding for countries in need. To build a strong bridges between the present and the future, we must strengthen the connections between nations. The coronavirus pandemic clearly demonstrated that the existing mechanisms of cooperation do not meet modern challenges. Therefore, the Summit of the Future is considered an important platform for rethinking global relations. Today, the international community faces many challenges: the rise in the number of forced migrants, increasing climate threats, and the unjust distribution of resources and wealth. The successes we have achieved often do not reach the most vulnerable segments of society. We need new approaches to multilateral governance based on fairness. That is why we must take decisive action as soon as possible. We do not have time to wait. The Kyrgyz Republic is ready to contribute to this great cause. We support the adopted pact for the future. We also support the adaptation of the Declaration of Future, as it is the future generations who will bear the greatest burden of decisions we make today. We must significantly accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have made significant progress in eradicating extreme poverty, developing infrastructure, and digitalization. Our experience in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals has shown that with the right vision and political will, even small countries with limited resources can succeed. Dear participants of the summit, the decisions we make now will shape the fate of more than one generation. Remember, the future is not an abstract concept, it is our collective responsibility. It is what we leave as a legacy to our children, grandchildren, and all who come after us. The world we are building today will become the source of their hopes and dreams. I invite you, esteemed leaders, to become architects of a future based on mutual trust, mutually beneficial cooperation, and impeccable fairness. We cannot live here without taking decisive action. The future demands bold and ambitious steps from us. Without any delay. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the President of the Kyrgyz Republic. I invite His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, to address the Assembly.
Thank you for this moment, President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, heads of state and government, and excellencies. Let me start off by congratulating Namibia and Germany for the excellent work they have done in guiding us all to this moment on reaching consensus on the pact of the future. We meet, President, at a time when the world faces many challenges and threats as well. Wars, conflict, and the specter of emerging conflicts are ever persistent and present features of our time. Climate change and public health challenges are not only an existential threat, but they are also reversing economic growth and developmental gains in many parts of the world. There is widespread inequality, poverty, unemployment, deprivation, and destitution in many countries in the world. These challenges transcend borders. Through this summit of the future, we must therefore forge global consensus on how to implement the solutions that are embedded in the pact. This pact must bridge the developmental divide. It must provide practical solutions to the challenges of today and tomorrow. The pact for the future is a great opportunity to change and also to reinvigorate the multilateral system so that it is fit for purpose to address the challenges that the world faces. It is an opportunity also to make good on the promises to reform the global governance architecture, including the international finance institutions and the United Nations Security Council, placing the fate of the world's security in the hands of a select few when it is the vast majority of the peoples of the world who bear the brunt of the various threats is unjust, unfair, and unsustainable. We agree with the UN Secretary General that the Summit of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to forge global consensus and make progress on priorities such as Sustainable Development Goals. For African countries, the summit must focus on global action in support of the continent's development agenda, Agenda 2063. To be meaningful, this summit of the future should reinforce the work towards ending poverty and realizing the fundamental right of development. This summit, therefore, must accelerate our collective efforts to advance development. The key element of the summit is working towards an agenda for peace, and this must involve strengthening the multilateral actions that need to continue taking place. We do believe that this is the time to recommit ourselves to adopting concrete actions, so we should leave this summit with a more ambitious, clearer, and concrete call to action to build a world for future generations that is far better for young people and for women than the world that we live in today. Our failure will in the end be a betrayal for future generations. And I do believe that we dare not fail. Action is what is required now. Thank you very much.
I thank the President of the Republic of South Africa. I invite His Excellency Joseph Numa Boakai, President of the Republic of Liberia, to address the Assembly.
Honorable Presiding, colleagues, Your Excellencies, esteemed representatives of partner governments and institutions, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I extend my warmest greetings to you and pay due respect to all standing protocols. I am pleased to bring you heartfelt greetings of the people of Liberia, who with great anticipation look forward to the outcomes of these discussions. As you may know, our recent presidential and general elections, conducted in the spirit of peace and democracy, paved the way for a smooth transfer of power just 8 months ago and set the objective path to development. In light of this, we have introduced ambitious agenda focusing on agriculture, roads, rule of law, education, sanitation, and tourism as the foundation for achieving our sustainable development goals. We are gathered here with a common mission to find ways to work together to make the world a better place for everyone. Even though we are facing difficult challenges, I believe we are more determined than ever to overcome them. Liberia has encountered significant obstacles in making progress towards sustainable development goals, but we are determined and dedicated to overcoming these challenges. Our experience reflects the struggle of many developing nations, which are hindered by social and economic pressures. Recent report shows a concerning trend in global development. The 2023-2024 Human Development Report revealed that the world's poorest countries are falling behind, leading